Hi everybody! So in this video our discussion will be about multicultural issues. Multicultural issues are commonly about ethnic or racial, social economy, religion, education, gender, but not all that issues will appear in the discussion. Our discussion today is Freeway 280, a poem, and a short story titled Lena St. Clair. Without further ado, let's go to the first discussion.
Hi, I'm Evelyn, so I'm going to explain about the bibliography of Lorna, the poet of Freeway 280. So, Lorna was born in California in San Jose and was raised in San Francisco, and she's a Mexican-American. So, in the poem Freeway 280, she used two languages, as you can see, Spanish and American, and in this poem, she also shows her American culture and her ethnic background and mixed those two. So Lorna, before she wrote the poem Freeway 280, she has a cultural experience when she read one of Pablo Neruda's works named The Heights of Machu Picchu. So she is inspired by Pablo Neruda's works named The Heights of Machu Picchu and kind of got a cultural experience, and then she wrote the poem Freeway 280. When she wrote this poem, she kind of wanted to share her life at that point. She wants to narrate that she has reached the point of understanding of the transition of being adult. So she kind of show how she grows from the childhood life to adult life. In the Freeway 280 itself, the summary for this poem is talking about the situation around the freeway era, freeway construction at the time in her neighborhood life. She detailed explained the environment before and after this freeway construction was exist. For your information, this Freeway 280 does exist at the time. It's called Freeway Interstate in California and was called the most beautiful freeway in the world. She detailed explained the environment before and after freeway construction, and especially in the first stanza, she explained how the landscape she used to see was gone because of this freeway. On the second stanza, she more emphasized the destruction of the plants and just remain some plants that are caused by this freeway that she described as race car. So Lorna, in this poem, is trying to show her struggle she is in with the transition of the environment. So we can see also in this third stanza, Lorna described the situation that she kind of confused whether she wants to get in or get out. At the first, she wanted to get out from the situation, but in the process, she kind of want to get back in and want to reclaim what she was once before in that place. In the first stanza, after all of the struggle process of deciding whether she wants to stay or get out and leave, she remains in wonder thought. Will she find her old self in a form of lucid, or will she just remain as a corpse in that place? And so how she described her struggle in this poem is we can analyze from each lines she used in this poem.
Hello, I'm Tirza. I'm going to talk about multicultural elements in Freeway 280. So this poetry gives out two multicultural elements. The first one is language barrier, and the second one is economic class. We can clearly see in the poem the poet uses two languages. The first one is Spanish and the second one is English. Reading from her background history, she grew up in a family who forbade her to speak no other language than English. for fear of how US citizen, or in this case English-speaking citizen, will treat the Spanish-speaking citizen. They fear that they will face stereotype or negative thoughts that, oh, Spanish people are bad people and something like that. We can clearly see in the poetry how the poet uses back and forth Spanish and English vocabulary. It suggests the clash in herself for growing up in both culture, how she has to keep maintain her original culture, or she has to readjust herself to the new culture, in this case American culture. You can see here in the first stanza, she said, once I wanted out, I wanted the rigid lanes to take me to a place without sun, without the smell, and so on and so on. It implies that she wants to move out from the neighborhood that keeping her in, that she wants to live in a city where nobody knows her and she could start a new life and completely be herself. But moving on to the second multicultural elements is economic class issue. We can clearly see here in the first stanza it says, the freeway conceals it all beneath a raised scar. It implies that when they build the freeway, it automatically they have to break down the neighborhood in order to build the freeway. But then we see her neighborhood in the form of, she described it in the Spanish vocabulary, las cajitas, means small houses near the gray cannery. When an industrial factory is built near a neighborhood, it implies that that neighborhood is not exactly filled with a well-to-do, a rich neighborhood, something like that. It implies that probably those people living in those las cajitas are actually employed to the cannery. So then we can conclude that when they built the freeway, they would probably banish the entire neighborhood. It suggests that the building of economy development does not always bring a positive impact, but does not always have positive outcome to every economic class. Like in this case, only people with cars could access the freeway when those neighborhoods are torn down for nothing. And in here we can see the poet when she wants to go out from the neighborhood. In the third stanza, I wanted out, wanted the rigid lanes to take me to a place without sun, without the smell of tomatoes burning. It implies that the neighborhood is really hot and really smelly with the smell from the factory working. She wants to go out because she feels like she's cramped out in the place and she wants to feel the world. But then when she goes out to the world and feels the new culture, it implies that she cannot really adjust herself in a new culture, because she said, I scrambled over the wire fence that would kept me out, which it means she couldn't go back in, but then she couldn't readjust herself, so she's stuck in the middle where she goes back to the place in the last stanza. Maybe it's here, in this land, where I'll find that part of me mown under like a corpse or waiting to bloom.
Hi, my name is Kirana.
And I'm Rilin.
Okay, we both are going to talk about issues in the story Lena and Clair. And we both especially will talk about gender and economic issue, because we see that gender issues and economic issues are overlapping in the story. So we think that we want to share to you what the issues are about.
Yeah, and how they related.
Yeah, first, we'll talk about the gender issue first. We see that there is inequality role between Harold and Lena in their marriage life. And this inequality role impacts to the chaos life in their marriage life.
And that is because also the difference of their payment. Harold in the story was said that he get 7 times more than what Lena had. It's because in their firm, Harold is the concept man, the chief architect, the designer, the person who makes the final sales presentation to a new client, while Lena worked under the interior designer. And it was because Harold think it will only fair for other workers that Lena is not promoted just because Lena is married to Harold. At first, Lena think, okay, that is fine, that seems fair. But just recently, Lena feels like something's wrong. Something of this thing of being equal bothers Lena.
Yeah, it's because Harold gets 7 times more than his wife. So in the role of the marriage life, we can see on the page 9, since Harold pays more, he had the deciding vote on how the house should look. So just because Harold gets paid 7 times more than Lena, so he feels that he deserves to get this position to control in designing their new life, just because he gets paid 7 times more than Lena. We know that as a husband, Harold should be the breadwinner for the family, but in the story we see that Harold seems overtaking Lena's role, which impacts to the inequality role in their marriage life.
Before they married, when they go dinner, when they're dating, they always split bills on everything they spend.
Yeah.
It's still going on when they're married now. After they get married, they still split bills, and according to us, what we think, that is not common.
Yeah.
And that is kind of wrong if you're married and you still split bills, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're single, it means you're still individual. It's okay for you to have your own account, bank account. But when you're married, even though you have your own bank account, but you still have to have this family account together. It is said also that they cannot include personal things in the list that they will split. Yeah, that is just not common in here. That shows they want to be equal, but in some way that doesn't sound equal.
Basically, common people see that the role of wife is to manage financial matters and to take care of children, while a husband should be the breadwinner for the family and a husband should protect their family. But in this story, we see that Harold seems overtaking the roles of Lena because he seems to dominate, to control their financial matters in the family, while as common people know that the role of managing financial issue is the roles of women or wife. We see that in marriage life, being equal is not the only matters that we should concern.
Especially only in financial.
Yeah, because we see that in marriage life there must be a lot of problems that we should be considered to work together, and we cannot do it individually because as a family we should work together to achieve what their family dreams about.
Yeah, like I explained before, when you're being equal, when you're single and you're married, it is totally different. So this different ways of thinking of being equal from Harold and Lena, this is what causes these issues to rise up.
Last but not least, we see that it is because the idea of equality between Harold and Lena is different. Harold perceives that what makes their marriage life happy is because the equality of financial matters. So Harold perceives that if he is fair about the financial matters, his family will be happy. But Lena doesn't perceive that way. She perceives that financial matters should not be the core or the basic concern of the family, because sometimes there are cases that financial matters can't be separate and they have to work together. Yeah, next.
So I'm Zefania, and I will talk about another problem here that is about race. So the racial issues here is not explicitly stated in the story, and it is rather subtle or implicit. And we know that in the story, the main character, Lena, was born in a multiracial family. Her father is Irish American and her mother is a Chinese, in which latter we know that the Chinese culture will take a huge portion in the story. Indeed, she must be learning about her parents' different cultures from the American culture and also from the Chinese culture, yet it gives difficulties on some part of her life, and especially after she experienced the adulthood and the marriage. The first one that I want to highlight in the story is about the cultural influences. In the story, we know that the Chinese cultures, which takes many part in the story, gives a real challenge for Lena. So in contrast, the culture in where she lives in the US doesn't seem to really take a huge part in the story, as her mother is just like culturally strong, and she instilled in Lena about the Chinese culture and the perspective. We can take, for example, the first one is I take it from the story, the saying Chen Wang Che Han, which means one thing is the result of another. It looks simple, but it has a good life lessons to be applied in reality. The second one is the belief on feng shui system, which is expressed by Lena's mother in the story. And when she says about Lena's apartment and then about the room placement that can define the good or the bad fortune Lena can get in the future. The third one, the last point here I have, is about humility, which has been rooted deeply in the Chinese culture for a long time. So in general, those 3 points seems to give no problems to Lena's life. It seems to give a good perspective or suggestion on how she can live her own life. But however, the last point here, humility can cause the problem arise, because we know that it can makes her live in confusion. So the society there in the US in which she lives in must have taught her about the opposite of humility. Yet the Chinese culture still dominates her life as it is expressed on how she behaves. Just like take for example on one part of the story, she is in her bedroom with her husband Harold, and she's trying to say what has been burdening her for a long time. But unfortunately, she's just crying and she cannot even finish her words. The question is, why did she not talk about the problem previously? Like, humility prevents her from expressing her opinions, her problems to her husband. As we know in general that Chinese culture believe that one form of humility is by accepting that speaking is not always a good thing and silence is not always a bad thing. The second things here that I want to point out, besides the cultural influences, is about the equality. In one part of the story, Lena was just trying to put herself down and consider her husband is better in so many ways than her. So after that, Lena tries to convince herself and makes a justification that she is equal in appearance comparing to her husband who is American. And then not only that, she also points out on how she thinks that she is equal to Harold, her husband, when it comes to their traits. Her fears of not being equal are somehow come from her bad thoughts, like, how can I receive this undeserved good fortune? It seems like her ethnical background cornered her from trying to reach all of the positivity and equality in life. So, in conclusions, we want to say that both texts are multicultural because they can be used to highlight certain marginalized groups, their problems, their struggles, and their ways of thinking. And then the second point is that we try to read the text multiculturally, so we can see that the poem and the story here can expose many different problems regarding race, gender, economy, and the other ones. And then the last point here is that it gives readers an understanding that diversity without equity is not the goal of multiculturalism. Not only that, the text can enhance readers' multicultural awareness about not to judge the differences and more to acknowledge the differences in their life.
We'll have 2 words